have fiber optic internet. So why are we still using our Starlink? Today, we're going to talk a little bit about our experience working from home with our Starlink for the last 3 years and some of what we've seen improve, some advice that we have if you are working from home or just getting set up with your Starlink, and why we keep our Starlink around despite having fiber optic internet. Let's dive into it. So if you watched our initial 1-year working from home with Starlink review, or if you've been watching our channel for a little while, you probably know that we live in the woods. When we first got our Starlink 3 years ago, we lived in a different location, but still in a very heavily wooded area, which can make setting up your Starlink for optimal performance a little bit tricky. What we found the biggest challenge with using a Starlink in this type of area is all of the tall trees that surround your house causing obstructions, which in turn causes disruptions in your internet service, particularly if you have a job where you are on video calls a lot. So how do you combat the battle of having all these high trees around and trying to use your Starlink? In our experience, the most important thing is to get your Starlink as high up as possible. Every time that we have modified our Starlink setup to raise it higher and higher, we've noticed the performance get exponentially better. If you happen to live somewhere that you have an open field or it's not a heavily wooded area, then this probably won't be something that you have to deal with. We have seen a lot of people who have actually been able to just place their Starlink on the ground or just affix it right to their back deck or something like that, and that seems to work perfectly fine for them. But if you live somewhere where you have lots of tall trees around you, that is probably not going to work for you. With our house that we're living in right now, the way that we have our Starlink set up is that we've attached multiple different poles together, affixed it right to our deck, starting on the ground so it can have as much stability as possible. We raise it up as high as we physically could. Despite having the option to upgrade our Starlink to the 2nd generation, we have stuck with the 1st generation Starlink because we honestly love it and we don't see any need to upgrade. This Starlink is so robust and strong. When we were setting it up at our house, it actually fell about 6 feet from the deck onto the ground and did not seem to have any issue at all and still works perfectly fine. Our statistics for our Starlink obstructions and downtime are really good. We honestly don't really have many obstructions, which, looking at where we were 3 years ago, I'll put some screenshots of what the obstructions look like at that time. How we have it now is basically a dream come true for how much we were struggling to not have obstructions back then. Where we live, since it's on a mountain, it does get extremely windy. So the most obstruction that we would typically see would be when we're having pretty strong winds, but that's really the only time that we notice obstructions with our Starlink. Since we started using Starlink 3 years ago, the app has gotten more and more sophisticated. It makes it super easy to identify where your obstructions are. They also have a tool where you can go out and scan your area to give you advice on where you should be placing your Starlink. So looking at where the app was when we first started to where it is now, it has really improved. One of the reasons that we stick with our Starlink despite having other internet set up is how easy the service is. When we moved from our last house to this house, we were easily able to just update the address and take our Starlink along with us. They also make it super easy to pause and resume your service or to cancel it. It's all just super user-friendly and easy. The customer service with Starlink is also really good. So when we first moved to our house, there was no fiber optic internet option. There was only DSL. So of course, we took our Starlink from our last home to this one, and we just had both internets going at the same time. So we were able to really easily compare how both of them are performing compared to each other. And honestly, the Starlink performs way better. The upload speed that we have with Starlink is truly amazing. The area that we live in was recently able to get fiber optic internet, which of course is a huge step up from DSL. So you're probably wondering, why do you still have your Starlink if you have fiber optic internet as well? The reason is a couple reasons for this actually. Redundancy. When we're working from home, it's super important that we're able to have a reliable, stable internet connection. We've had times where our fiber optic internet has just completely dropped out, and in that case, we're easily able to jump up onto our Starlink internet. We also use different internets for different things. Starlink internet has unbelievable upload speed, so if we know we're working on a project where we need to upload a bunch of data, that's when we're going to call in our Starlink. Another one of the reasons why we keep our Starlink around is because we absolutely love the insights that we're able to get from it. If the Starlink internet drops, we can easily open up the app and see exactly what is going on down to the minute. That kind of visibility into what's going on is so valuable to us. When our fiber optic internet went down, we were basically just in the dark and we had no way to log on to an app or anything and see what is causing it or what's going on. And of course, this happened on a holiday, so there's not even anybody that you could call to help you. So after 3 years of working from home with our Starlink, we are even more pleased and happy with it than we were at the beginning. If you're considering getting a Starlink, we cannot recommend it enough. One of the things that we love so much about it is that it's so versatile. You can literally just pick it up and move it if you're moving a house or something like that. Our biggest piece of advice if you're getting set up with your Starlink, especially if you live in a wooded area, is really just to raise it up as high as you physically can to have as little obstructions as possible. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. We hope that it was helpful to you and gave you a little bit more insight into what it's like for us after working from home with our Starlink for 3 years. If you have any questions on anything we didn't cover here, or you have your own experience with a Starlink, please feel free to leave it in the comments down below. We'll see you guys next time.